There's a lot of moving pieces in there, and not to pull us away from insurance, I guess, but back to the State Farm kind of hate that was getting. So you're saying that they didn't know about the fires and were able to pull out just before this major fire. That it's been ongoing conversations in the background with reinsurance, and so it's not. There shouldn't be deep conspiracy theories on State Farm going like, you know what?
They set the fires.
We have an inside loop on setting the fire. Like they've been having ongoing conversations, like you said, whether within themselves or the reinsurance, they've just been trying to manage risk.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, that's funny. I love, I don't know. I love a good conspiracy as much as the next guy. Like I sometimes it's fun to go down that rabbit hole and go like, oh yeah, that's interesting. The State Farm non-30. Yeah. What did they know? It was like the smart city plan that overlays on top of where the fires go. The 2028 LA smart city, like all this stuff that people are talking about. And I mean, I don't know. I will say this: were the fires intentionally started? I don't know.
Right?
Would it surprise me if they were? No. But
you don't think that person was hired by like a big?
I don't think so. Like I think there's a lot of conspiracies that happened over the years, and some of them at the time people thought were crazy, and then later you're like, oh, that was totally conspiracy, and everybody knew it, right? So like there's tons of stuff that's happened like that. The winds that happened in LA are unique, right? So there's a lot of factors that have played into this fire. And from the insurance side of things, I don't see it that way. I don't see it as a conspiracy. I see it as a lot of like perfect storm factors that happened, right? There's a lot of things that went wrong that some of the things could have been planned on and were mismanaged and misplanned. And some of the things you couldn't plan on. And, but from the insurance risk standpoint, I guess what I would say, and I saw this reel that somebody had played the other day, and they said insurance companies are not the problem. The insurance companies are the canary in the coal mine. And they said when the insurance companies started this non-renewal process, and it didn't happen last month or the month before. Really, the big push started in 22, 23. But the conversations that I know of, and I'm not a CEO level person in a big insurance firm, right? But the conversations that I know of on my level had started 6 years ago. And so when they look at it and go, you have a real fire problem in a lot of times. So like in Washington, there's areas in Eastern Washington where companies don't want to insure them. And they're like, but we're only a mile from a 24-hour manned fire station. We're like, yeah, but the problem is not like, oh, I burnt my candle, tipped over, my house caught on fire, and can the fire department get there in time? The problem is when a wildfire starts and the conditions are right for a wildfire and the winds are blowing, nobody can stop it.
Right.
Like the sheer magnitude and force of something of nature when it gets going like that, like you just have to get out of the way. You're trying to mitigate it. You're trying to reduce. You're trying to contain. Like you think about it, this has been on the news and it's been all over for a week or so, and it's 22. No, I heard this morning they updated. It's 31% contained.
Yeah,
for the Palisade fires. Like that's like there's just a lot that happens there. So I guess I would say like I don't think the insurance companies knew specifically when or what would happen. But I do think I like what the one guy said is the insurance companies are the canary in the coal mine. I think the insurance companies, like their job is risk management.
Right.
Like that's what they do. We have teams of actuaries that are all looking at statistics of like, how likely is this to happen? How likely are you to get in a car accident based on what factors? So when the insurance companies look and go, I don't think I want to offer insurance anymore in this area because we couldn't charge you enough premium to offset the risk of your house burning down because of wildfire, not because we're worried that you're going to leave a candle burning, but we're worried about wildfire because of the area, right? Like what kind of area you live in and what can they do to prevent and stop a wildfire? I think then you have to look at it and go, what then, me personally, I would say, what then has the state been doing wrong that put us in this position?
Yeah.
Like, how have we?
But that's where the conspiracy theories start because then it's like, well, the state wants.
Right. The smart city. Yeah. So the state did it on purpose.
Why would we manage?
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, so I grew up driving, I didn't grow up driving. Growing up as a family, we would go to California often, usually a road trip. And I don't ever remember any fires. And in 2021, my family, now that I'm grown and have a family, we drove down, and between San Francisco and Los Angeles, we drove through like a smoke covered air. Yeah. And it was so surreal thinking like, I've never experienced this ever. And I've done, I don't know, 15, 20 trips before then to California. And at this point, it was already kind of common that California catches on fire in 2021.
Right.
But it just seems so surreal that you do wonder, like, this isn't an overnight mismanagement.
No.
And a conspiracy. I personally agree. I think it's been an ongoing mismanagement for a long time.
Right.
And like you mentioned, insurance companies are in that business of managing risks. And so they've been looking at this and noticing, hey, this is just bad.
Right. The insurance companies are like, this is going to blow up. This is a powder keg. Yeah. And we know that something's going to happen. And so they've been trying to limit their exposures. They've been trying to get out of areas that they feel are lost cause. Mm-hmm. And so in general, the insurance companies are the canary. Now, I do want to just like touch on, because I'm sure we're going to get somebody that's going to comment like, well, that's climate change and that's what's.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to debate whether it is climate change or not climate change, because it's the same thing as when here in Whatcom County, we had a big flood in 2021. It caused massive amounts of damage. People lost their homes. One person lost his life. And people were like, oh, it's climate change. Or the Governor Inslee came up and said, it's climate change. There's nothing we can do about it. And then other people said, no, it's because we're not dredging the river. And ultimately, I said, it doesn't matter which side of that fence you're on. If you think it's climate change or you think it's because you didn't dredge the river, the reality is it happened, and that using reusable grocery bags, although they might be a nice feeling, are not going to change the global climate. Mm-hmm. And so, and you're not going to go dredge the river. So you're not going to change either one of those things. Mm-hmm. So let's focus on what you can change. If it is climate change that's causing fires in California, then I would say the state of California, the Department of Natural Resources federally, they need to look at how do you manage your forests differently in the face of climate change. Right. You can't manage the forest the same way if climate change is impacting forest fires and causing devastation like this. And if you say, well, it's not climate change, well, then the Department of Natural Resources and the state need to look at how you manage your, like
either way, right?
Either way, you have to look and say, we're here, regardless of how we got here, we have to change what we're doing. Because if we just keep doing the same thing and tell people to stop using grocery bags and drive electric cars, it's not going to change this problem anytime soon.
Right.
And it's in global warming or climate change is a global problem that you can't solve in one area. Right. So I understand that people will say, well, everyone has to do their part. And I'm not saying we're not. Like, I think we should be a good steward of the world that we live in. And I think we need to be aware of how we live and how we impact our environment. But I'm just saying that just preaching that doesn't change it. Right. You have to look at it and say, you have to change the way you manage stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that wasn't something that happened last month or last year. Yeah. That's something that's been building for the last, at least, like I said, at least 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So it's definitely the underlying issues need to be addressed. or it's going to continue to get worse.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good just point. And reality is fires and kindling are a real thing. So whether you want to take care of it in a green way or not, it needs managed.
Right.
To avoid devastating fires that impact millions of people.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be interesting. I do think that this is going to be a defining insurance moment.
Yeah.
It's going to change. Reinsurance carriers have been around for a long time, and I think that they will continue to be around. Insurance companies have weathered big storms. They will weather this. They will get through it, and will continue to offer insurance. It will have an impact, significant impact in California, just like the Northridge earthquake changed earthquake insurance in general in California, changed the way earthquake insurance was offered, changed the coverages, changed deductibles. It changed companies. There was a consolidation of companies. Some companies completely pulled out of the state. Some companies did go insolvent, some of the very small companies. So you'll see those sort of things are going to happen through this fire as well. You're going to see that companies are going to reduce coverage options. Companies will reduce their footprint in California or in wildfire areas because they're going to go, yeah, we were already on that path and we're going to keep going down that path. The reinsurance carriers are going to adjust prices.
Yeah.
And I think you'll also see building code changes through both Hurricane Harvey and the Northridge earthquake. You saw building codes change to say, hey, if we could have done something different in how we built these buildings, it would have reduced loss of property and loss of life.
Right.
So I think you're going to see building code changes come out of this as well, where they go, hey, if you're in these areas, here's some new things that you have to do, right? Like maybe it is non-combustible roofing, maybe it's non-combustible siding, and combined with hardscape, so you can't have it reduces the brush and fuel for fires. So there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to see change to address the massive impact that this is going to have. But I think ultimately I would say like it's going to be okay. Like we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the great things of I'll say the American spirit is like, when bad things happen, we figure out how to pull together, how to get through it, and then how to change and adapt for the next.
Yeah.
And every time, because if we hadn't made those changes with reinsurance and with diversification and changing how the business models were working in insurance companies in 1992, the insurance companies would not have been prepared for Hurricane Katrina. And they wouldn't be prepared to be able to deal with what's going on in California right now.
Yeah.
But as it sits, most of the insurance companies go, we're not changing our strategy moving forward. We have good underwriting we were on the right path. We're going to continue down that path. So in areas where we were reducing our appetite, we're going to continue to reduce that appetite and leave that. We're not reducing it tighter, but maybe we're going to hold to it. And it is going to not stop us from wanting to grow in areas and make sure that we have coverage for people in other areas where we're not as exposed to that. So that diversification will still be there. So